Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire, while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Today's guest, well, she's going to take you upside down. She's going to take you through the air very fast. She is a model person for overcoming self-doubt, for facing your fears. She is a role model to the nth degree. Let's get into talking with her. This is going to be actually a very exciting conversation. Michelle Curran, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah. And the best part is we're both from Wisconsin. So we don't have any weird accents.
I was going to say, so I actually can hear your accent. I've worked really hard to lose mine.
No, don't tell me you've worked hard to get rid of it.
And so I got made fun of it in pilot training when I
can imagine.
First moved to Columbus, Mississippi, of all places where there's plenty of accents. But it was by the other students. They would ask me to say AG words like bag, flag. They're like, is the flag flying or is the flag flying? And so I got self-conscious about it. So I would intentionally think of it before I said it and correct it. So I think it's mostly gone now, but occasionally it will sneak back out.
Oh, it has to sneak back out because it's one of those things that's it's just born in you. And it's, being a Midwestern person, it's always one of those things where very happy to talk to people. Now you've actually overcome some things throughout your career to be able to be a speaker now. Did you ever think that you would ever be like a keynote speaker or anything?
No. Oh, no. I was even 5 years ago, if you had told me that, I would have been like, that's a no. But if you told me that as a child, I would have broke out in hives from anxiety. I was super, super shy growing up, and that would be my worst nightmare.
But now it's one of those things that do you think it's as scary as flying?
In a different way. Yeah. Flying is all about I could die kind of fear, where public speaking is more like the judgment of others kind of fear, which unfortunately I think can be just as scary as the first one. I was definitely nervous when I started doing this almost a year ago now. I would get very, very nervous at first, and I still get nervous some, but now it's more excitement. And once I'm in my rhythm on stage, I actually have a lot of fun doing it now, where at first
that's awesome.
It was just kind of stress the whole time.
I love it. And I want to go back to when you first started to become a pilot, when in the Air Force, and, you were in a F-16 for 13 years.
Yep, exactly.
So when you started pilot school, when you stepped up to the plate to say, you know what, I'm going to be one of those people up there. What was that mindset? How did you shift that mindset from living in Wisconsin to going, I want to be that pilot?
Yeah, so I kind of was a late bloomer, I guess you could say, when I decided I wanted to be a fighter pilot. When I was on the Thunderbirds, people would ask me all the time, right? How did you end up here? And I think just because based on what I was doing then, they guessed that I had, come from an aviation family, been to a lot of air shows, been that little kid in the crowd who was inspired to go be a pilot after seeing the team fly. But I did not grow up in the military or an aviation family. And so I didn't even know it really existed as far as fighter aircraft until I got to college, and I, went to school as a criminal justice major because I thought I wanted to be an FBI agent.
Oh, wow.
And then I saw 2 fighter jets take off close up, and I was like, nope, just kidding. Sorry, FBI. I wanted to be that.
Just kidding. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that was the pivot. And still, though, at that point, I was like, I got, this visceral reaction, goosebumps, and just the jet noise. It vibrates your whole body. I was like, I just got so excited. I'm like, I'm going to go do that. but I still felt a lot of fear when, like, the next year I'm in ROTC and people are like, hey, who here wants to be a pilot? And I still found myself having to fight my natural reaction to just not raise my hand, because I hated being put on the spot and I hated kind of putting myself out there.
Yeah.
And I had to start doing that in order to make that move. And so it wasn't like this perfect mindset where I was just, yep, I'm going to go do this now. Like, here we go. I was driven and really goal oriented. So I was like, yeah, I want to go do this. What are the steps to make it happen? But running in parallel to that was kind of this internal struggle of constantly having to force myself in super uncomfortable situations.
And now becoming an officer, that had to be an interesting kind of evolution in your life. If you were always shy, now you're put into that position of leadership to help others to kind of find their potential or even get through some of those fears that you had. Was that a hard transition?
So in ROTC, they kind of try to set you up for that by, they create like a mock wing with leadership positions and stuff. And I remember distinctly the colonel who was running the entire detachment pulling me aside and being like, why are you not the cadet wing commander? Which really means nothing in the big scheme of things. But as far as that organization goes, like, that's a position that really sets you up for showing your leadership capabilities and, setting you up for the next career you want in the Air Force, because getting a pilot slot can be competitive. And she's like, you're doing really well in all these other things, but like, why did you not put your name in the hat for cadet wing commander? And I realized that it was because I was like so terrified of putting myself out there so visibly and potentially failing. And I'm an introvert. I hated being out there in front of people, and it felt very exposed. So I didn't do it. And luckily I still was able to get a pilot slot, from some of the other stuff I did. But pilots are kind of weird when it comes to military officers. The vast majority of the first part of your career, you aren't in charge of anyone unless you're in a crewed aircraft. Yourself. Yeah. So it's interesting because people are like, there's no other career where you would be put in charge of a $20 million airplane that, is such a high repercussion environment at such a young age. But then I look at some of the officers, especially in some of the other branches, where they're in the Army or the Marines, and they're deployed and they're in charge of 100 troops.
Lives.
I'm like, I don't know. I would say that's more difficult than being in charge of one expensive piece of machinery. I don't know. Leading people is hard.
Yeah. Now, when you were in the cockpit, right? It probably took a while to be able to get super comfortable in there. But when you were in there, what was the feeling that you had, I guess, about the service that you were providing, but at the same time, like that had to be a huge leadership point of you convincing yourself, because having been in one of those, there's so many things that are going on at once. To make determinations, you have to be a leader within your own life. How did you get to that point?
Yeah, so the training is really good. I mean, the Air Force pilot training pipeline is really incredible. And it's this building block approach where, you're given slightly more complex things to handle over time. And we when you get behind the aircraft, as far as like your brain is behind, we always call it a helmet fire. Like, if someone was to look at you, you'd have smoke coming out your ears because your brain is
that's awesome.
Your brain, like your processor in your head, is maxed out, and you just can't catch back up. And every fighter pilot, I would say every pilot in general, has been there at some point. And I think you almost have to experience that overload of like, I am maxed out to the point where I'm, making tactical errors in training, but I'm not so maxed out that I'm shutting down. I'm still flying the jet. I'm still flying it safely. So there's like this fine line to walk where they're pushing you enough where you're experiencing that super uncomfortable accelerated growth, but it's not so much that it's putting you to a dangerous situation where you just shut down and can't handle the basics of flying an airplane. And so over time, your I guess your tolerance for discomfort and your ability to function at a certain speed just increases little by little. And then all of a sudden you're, successfully flying an F-16 and managing all these sensors and working with other aircraft and talking on the radio while you're doing all these other things. And when you see that in a vacuum, it's like, holy crap, that person must be like exceptionally gifted and talented to be able to do that. But I mean, maybe we are a little bit.
I think you're underselling yourself again.
I mean, there is some level of capability required for sure, but
yeah,
I mean, it takes time. It takes a lot of repetition, and it takes a lot of work to get there, no matter how talented you are naturally.
And now you have an amazing family, and they've been with you through this journey. Now, I want to kind of transition from, like you just said, in the cockpit, you have all of these things coming at you at once. How do you transition that mindset from there to home?
Sometimes not very well. Okay. It took time. Yeah, I think anyone in a career that's really demanding like that, it took time. I remember early on in my career when I was going through stuff like the officer equivalent of basic training and into pilot training and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. That was like all consuming, and you got really used to working with people that were all pushing at the same speed towards this big goal. Right. And sometimes I realized, like, I went home and went back to my parents' house and, spent some time with them after I had been through ROTC and, into pilot training. And I remember getting so frustrated with like people's indecisiveness and like the slowness that like just deciding where we're going to eat dinner. I was like, oh my gosh, like I had no patience for it. And
that's crazy. Yeah.
I got better at realizing that I was living in this like vacuum of high performance environment where you're being sculpted into this high performing pilot in this jet, and you have to think quickly and make decisions quickly, and your average person doesn't need to operate like that, and I don't think they should, because it's stressful.
And they probably shouldn't. It's very stressful.
Right, for sure. But at first, when I was young, I was kind of unforgiving to other. I would be like, what the heck, why is this taking so long? This is ridiculous. And then I'd be like, no, right. It's fine, it's okay. I'm much better at that now, and later in my career, the second half of my career, I think I was able to step back from work more and enjoy my family, enjoy my hobbies, and kind of decompress and have an identity outside of just the job. But at first it was a learning curve as far as that goes as well.
And in your years in combat, I think that's another a huge thing to have people understand is, when you went over there, you had objectives, right? And when you came back, how did you transition back? How was your transition back from when you were over, when you were deployed?
I think it actually went pretty well. I was, my husband was in Fallujah as a turret gunner. So he had, back in 2005. So a crazy time over there. So I think of stories like that, and I was like, how the heck did you deal with that mental stress of being shot at almost every single day for like 11 months straight? Like how, because I can't even imagine that. I'm like, how does your brain deal with that and then transition back? And so I think for me, my deployment in Afghanistan, there's definitely some privilege of having the separation that you have flying at 20,000 feet and being in a cockpit. I mean,
there is, but yeah,
we get given a hard time by the guys on the ground, and rightfully so. Like, they're in terrible conditions sometimes, and they're in a lot more danger than we were. So it's very easy to kind of separate yourself from like the trauma that is going on in a war zone. Right. But yeah, you're very mission driven when you're in that situation. And I think while I was deployed, I did a pretty decent job of taking time to decompress and, getting my workouts in, like hanging out with people. And this is a funny story, kind of embarrassing. We were deployed to Afghanistan, and we were on alert. So we had, 2 alert F-16s there ready to go in case something kicked off that we needed to be on site, really quickly.
Yep.
And so the alert pilots are in the squadron, in your uniform, ready to go take off in just a few minutes. And so myself and another pilot, which is funny because he ended up actually eventually going to fly for the Thunderbirds as well. And we actually overlapped for my first year on the team. But
That's
at that
cool.
point, you got to keep your mind like occupied, but like you got to decompress somehow. So we had gotten these care packages and there were like these coloring books for adults in them, like the really complex coloring books with colored pencils and this like 5-pound bag of gummy bears. And so we're sitting at the table in the squadron, literally coloring these coloring books with colored pencils and eating gummy bears. And the base commander came in, like he was going around and visiting every squadron. And so this general walks in and we were not expecting him at all. And we're just sitting there eating gummy bears and coloring. He's probably like, what the heck?
These are our pilots?
Yeah, this is our war fighting capability.
Oh, that's awesome. At least you didn't have crayons and the Marines started to eat them. No, I'm just kidding. I've talked to a lot of Marines, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, my husband makes that joke all the time.
Oh, yeah, you have to.
I was like, I don't know. I'm not really ashamed. I'm embarrassed that I didn't realize the general was coming in, but I'm not really ashamed by this because doing whatever it is, whether it's that or it's going to the gym, kind of keeps you sane while you're there and gives your brain a second to just relax and not be focused on the task at hand.
Yeah, being on alert status, that has to be stressful in the fact that you just don't know exactly what you're getting into as soon as you're called out, right? Until you, in essence, either get on the tarmac or whatnot. But once you get in the air, what did it feel like when you had objectives? Because I think a lot of people don't kind of like grasp they watch Top Gun and they go, oh my gosh, this has got to be what they talk about. And, when they're in the cockpits, what goes through your head when you have an objective, when you're up there, from takeoff to objective complete? What are you thinking? What do you talk to yourself? Do you have a mantra? Do you have something that you use to really calm your brain?
So I think it's kind of 2 parts. Part of it is falling back just on the training that you've already had.
Okay. Yep.
And so you're rushed to get through ground operations, to get strapped into the jet, to do all the, flip all the switches in the right order, to do all the checks, get the pins pulled on the weapons. Like all of that is really compressed compared to normal. And it's very easy to miss something.
Yeah.
And so when you're in that situation, you have to fall back on those habit patterns that you've already created. And so it's just, your brain almost goes on autopilot, not to use pun intended, I guess, literal autopilot.
That's really good. I like it.
You go through the flow of the motions and you don't need to sit there and read a checklist and be like, all right, step 1, step 2, because you don't have time to do that.
Right.
And if you didn't have those habit patterns, you would miss stuff and make big mistakes. And so some of it's falling back on that training. And then I think when you're transiting to and from the location where the objective is at, is usually when you have a couple minutes to be like, okay, we're on the way. I'm strapped into the jet. I've done all that. Now I have a second where there's not something in the aircraft that needs to be done constantly. And I can look at the notes that I have from whoever briefed me as we were running out to the aircraft. I can review the knowledge that I do have and be like, okay, based on this, I'm expecting it would likely be this kind of attack or this kind of attack. And, you're never going by yourself. You're always with a wingman. So there's 2 jets, 1 pilot in each. And so you might talk on the radio and be like, hey, look, when we get there, the radio is going to be busy, especially if you're with someone who's inexperienced.
Oh, yeah.
That was my first deployment. So it was me some of the time, even though I was a flight lead. So I was leading the formation a lot of the times, just to kind of get on the same page. You're on the same page from all the training you've done, but every little one is going to have nuances and be like, look, we're coming into this. This is probably what we're going to hear as soon as we check in on frequency. I just want you to hang out at this altitude. And this is going to be the plan. You're going to drop the weapon. I'm going to fire the laser to guide it in, or vice versa, or whatever. So you're like, okay, you're getting as much done as you can. So you're as prepared as possible when you do check in on the frequency. And if you're getting launched from alert, there's a good chance when you do check in, mass chaos is going on.
Right.
And
That's what I was going to
yeah,
imagine.
it can be nuts. Like you're trying to check in and you can't even get dead air on the radio. So you're not stepping on someone else's call. Like you're waiting to talk in between other calls and they're just continuous, and it can be confusing. And so I think falling back on all the repetition of training you did to get ready for that specific deployment and not rushing yourself, like it can be very easy to be like, okay, we got to put this, we got to get in there now. Like it's critical, which can be true, but that's when you make mistakes. So you got to stay calm. You got to stay methodical, and just do it like you've done it in training 100 times before. Cause that's how you avoid doing something weird that messes up the attack or can cause, some big problems. So yeah, you prepare as much as you can. Yeah. But sometimes it's still chaos.
And when you're up there, and I think this is the other interesting part. So like when you're on the ground, you have the ability to be able to, in essence, tactfully see things, and especially with the drones now, they can kind of pinpoint things. When you're up in the air, it's a different perspective. How do you really, that communication of, hey, your objective is over here. Obviously, you get coordinates and you can laze on the target, but how do you really put yourself in that realm? Because I've never really contemplated that, but how do you put yourself in that realm to be able to almost like 3D see what you're going after, because you're so high up?
Yeah, so you have an IR pod, that can show you black and white imaging. Essentially,
that's still hard to see. Yeah,
it is hard to see, and you're looking from above, right? So even though you can zoom in, if you have guys on the ground that are calling in an attack, they're standing at ground level, maybe looking across the field at a building. So when they describe a building, it's going to look very different from your perspective. And when we spin up for deployments, especially, in Afghanistan and doing close air support, which is the type of mission that the Air Force has been doing for the last 20 plus years, they learn what things look like from your perspective, and you learn how to translate what things look like in your pod to their perspective. And so it's kind of on both sides, where you'll work with them, and in training, you might bring them over to the squadron and be like, hey, like, let's actually watch the cockpit recording from my aircraft so you can see what I'm seeing. And especially the younger guys, you'll be like, look, well, first, listen how fast you read those coordinates. Remember, I'm also flying an airplane while I'm trying to write those down. So slow down, because I'm just going to ask you to say it again. And so when they hear themselves on the radio and they're like, oh, yeah, like that was way too fast. I totally understand what you're saying. And then you're like, hey, when you described that blue building, I can't see the color blue in my pod. So that is not helpful. Like, I need you to describe the shape from above. Like, it's rectangular and it's running parallel to a paved road, like things like that. And so sometimes they'll describe things that are too small for you to see. And so it's a learning curve from their side, and it's a learning curve from our side to kind of learn, how to make that communication work. So we're on the same sheet of music when things are urgent and things are happening fast. It just takes a lot of coordination and repetition.
I love, like, that was probably the best life lesson I've learned in many, many months of many people seeing things from different perspectives, and you have to make sure that they understand what you see for them to understand what they see. That's huge. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things most corporations and most, I'd say, family units could actually take away from that.
I was going to say, like, that's in a marriage, right? Like,
oh my gosh.
Well, yes. I told you that, but turns out you didn't hear that, right? Like, you heard the words, but you did not have the same conceptual understanding as I was trying to communicate. Well, then that's where conflict happens.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, I love that. That's a huge advantage and huge perspective, especially from the standpoint of, like, you look at a corporate environment. They could be going through something the same. They could have the same objective of, we're going to hit this, but looking at it from a different perspective, management to the person that's making the widget. Yeah, that's a huge aspect. Now, I want to transition from being the combat pilot to now going on the Thunderbirds, because it's a huge honor, a huge privilege to be on the Thunderbirds. What did that process look like?
Yeah, so the application process is fairly lengthy and competitive. the Thunderbirds was something that always kind of intrigued me and that I was interested in, but it also was really intimidating. And for most of my career, I never seriously considered it because I didn't think that I was actually a good enough pilot to fly in the demo.
That's not shocking what you just said to me.
That you
would think that.
I think you just like put people on a pedestal, even when you're in the world. Like it's so easy to do it. I know for sure people from the outside of the military put the Thunderbirds on a pedestal, but I think it can happen even to other fighter pilots. And then you have the other extreme where the people like that just make fun of the team and talk about flying loops to music. But I still think some of them, if you actually have a one-on-one conversation,
are jealous.
They're like, that flying looks hard. And so everyone that I've talked to going through training for the Thunderbirds, once they've gotten hired, during those like 4 to 5 months of getting ready to do the first show, they have moments where they're like, holy crap, I don't know if I'm a good enough pilot to make it through this program. Cause it's hard. Like I was flying the F-16 for like 7 years before I came to the team, more than that. And so I already was comfortable in the jet, but the flying you're doing is just so different. It's tough and it's got to be super precise and there's not a lot of margin for error. And it was stressful and difficult. And I didn't really get comfortable. My second season on the team was really weird with the pandemic. We didn't do nearly as many air shows as normal. But I think my third season, which was a bonus season, it's usually only 2 years. I got a third year because of the pandemic. My third season ended up being my favorite because I think I finally felt comfortable enough where I could have a little bit more perspective and enjoy the unique position I was in. Where the first 2 years, I just felt like I was surviving.
And it seems like the learning curve, you can't really have a learning curve there because what you're doing is like you said, it's such close quarters. It's such aggressive flying. You can't make small mistakes to be big mistakes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the way we kind of think of it from a training perspective is we have a couple 2-seaters, like what you flew in. And we'll put the experienced pilot who's been on the team for a year in the back seat and the new person in the front seat. And that person is back there as an instructor until the mistakes become small enough that there's still like egregious mistakes as far as it comes to the crowd viewing a maneuver or the formation. Like they would be like, what is going on? But they're not dangerous anymore. So you keep someone in the back seat in the early flights where people are all over the place and they're there to take over the controls and intervene and save your lives as required. But as soon as that student is consistently, the deviations are small enough that you're not worried that they're going to hit the ground or the other jets. You're like, okay, I'm out. Like you need to do this on your own without someone in the back seat. Cause it gives you that psychological safety that that person back there is going to save you. And even if it's not conscious, subconsciously, you're like, I'm going to push this further than I would if no one was back there because they know what they're doing and they can intervene and stop us if it's not working.
But they don't have the instructor brake back there, do they?
Well, it's like driver's ed, right? Like where
extreme driver's ed
can intervene. So the back seat, there's a paddle switch and you can squeeze it on the stick and that overrides the front controls, and now you have control of the aircraft.
Oh, that's so weird.
Yep.
All right, be honest, did you ever have that happen to you?
Oh yeah, everyone does.
Oh really?
Yeah.
And do they tell you before they do it, or all of a sudden are you thinking that you have no control?
No, you know it's coming. You're like okay. So especially in the Thunderbird for the Delta, when all 6 jets are together, and you're trying to learn to fly on that wing. You start off the source aircraft, so instead of taking all 6 out at once, it'd be Thunderbird 1 and then you just on the wing on your side. But as you move further away and you put another aircraft in between, you're at the end of the whip. And so it's weird flying and, trying to do a roll or a loop like that. You'll get mismatched wings and stuff where your vector, where your plane goes is not lined up with theirs, and you can get converging where you're moving towards each other when you shouldn't be. All this weird stuff can happen. Wow. And so everyone when I was in the front seat learning as a new student, it was I would get through a quarter of the roll, and then the guy in the back seat was like, I have the aircraft, and I could feel him paddle. And I would just let go of the controls over and over and over. And then you're like, okay, I made it halfway through the roll that time. Okay, I finally made it through the whole roll.
What goes through your mind, though? What goes through your mind at that time? Especially from you when you were younger, having that kind of that self-confidence. What did you get past that? So
in the moment, you're kind of just focused at the task at hand, and you get frustrated when, fail over and over and over on one flight. We're like, okay, we're going to try another one. Oh, didn't make it that time. Okay, we're going to try another one. But you also, the instructors they're your peers, right? They're people that were you a year ago. And so we're pretty good about, I was the instructor my last year on the team, and I was the person in the back seat. So we're pretty good about being like, hey, here's some instructional fixes, like try to do this and use more power or use more rudder or whatever. But I think if you're good, you're also like, hey, everyone has been there. I struggled with that exact same thing. And even once you start to get it and I'm not in the back seat anymore, it's going to be like, this is a hard maneuver. It's going to be one you fight with for the first half of air show season, even when you're in front of a crowd. And so you try to be the voice of perspective and be like, hey, like you're doing fine. Here's some fixes we can do to make you better. But this is normal. Everyone goes through what you're going through right now.
I love it. Make sure you go to MACE. It's MACE. Curran. It's CURRAN.com. You can find out more. The other cool thing is I love the videos that you post. I always watch them on your LinkedIn page, but I'm sure you have it on other pages. But from the cockpit, you're able to see some of the maneuvers. How hard was that? Filming that had to be fun, but at the same point, was it stressful to having that camera back there going, people are going to be able to see this?
No, so the GoPro is actually interesting. So I put some on LinkedIn, but then also on my Instagram, I have a lot more flying videos, and that's just MACE.
Oh, cool. MACE, okay.
To find me there. And I've been posting those since 2019. So there's a lot built up on there. And that was kind of how my foray into spending any time and effort on social media in general. But the camera thing is weird. It's up to the commander of the squadron, Thunderbird 1, to kind of dictate the policy of how much the pilots are allowed to use the cameras or not. And my boss's kind of policy was, hey, as long as it is not a distraction and it's only like you get in the aircraft, you suction cup it to the canopy, you turn it on before takeoff, you're not messing with it once you're airborne. Like it's not detracting from your focus in the air. Then he was fine with it. And if it became something that was a distractor, it would have been like, hey, no more cameras in the cockpit. That is just kind of a secondary nice to have because the team's mission is to recruit, retain, and inspire. So it is definitely a great tool to be able to reach people in that capacity, but it's always far down the line of priorities over, safety airborne and what you should be focusing on. So I never really thought about the camera once it was up there because it was just, it wasn't the priority.
Right. It's so cool to be able to have that perspective, though. It's one of those things, and you have a great book that's coming out here in June. Is it still June coming out?
Yep, end of June. Upside Down Dreams. It's a children's book.
That's awesome. I saw the cover. It's pretty cool. What does that mean to you to be able to be that that person? Starting out from Wisconsin, starting to be that shy person, but getting in to be able to be that impact person, that person that, younger girls, even boys are looking at and going, gosh, that'd be cool to be her. What does that feel like?
That was the most rewarding part of being a Thunderbird pilot. The flying was super cool, but knowing all the things I struggled with, like my inner critic and self-doubt and just this internal struggle to be able to push myself outside of that comfort zone and all the fear and social anxiety and all the things, I would meet kids that I could tell struggled with those things all the time. And I could see just that one interaction with me or with one of the other pilots was just like turning a light bulb on in their heads as far as what is possible, especially with me and little girls. Them seeing, a woman doing something like that. I could see it was opening like the aperture of what they saw as possible for themselves, which was the most rewarding thing. That's why I wanted to do the kids book. That's why I'm doing keynote speaking now. So it ended up creating this entire next career for me, which was never the intention. But
Right.
as my time kind of wrapped up on the Thunderbirds, which was going to happen regardless of what I decided to do next, I really just loved that part so much. I wanted to figure out a way to continue to do it. So that's how my company, Upside Down Dreams, same name as the kids' book, kind of came to fruition.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for being that positive impact and for your service, and then continuing on, even though it was something that you didn't see yourself doing. Now you're creating that huge impact for a future generation. Make sure you go to macecurran.com. You can find out all sorts of different things about her. You can book her for an appearance. There's a lot of different newsletters about her. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it, Michelle.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed the Wisconsin accent too.
I was trying to have it less. I could have went with an Alabama if you would have wanted me to.
Oh no. This felt like home. It was like you talking to one of my relatives.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, thanks so much. And we'll have to have you on again once that book is out and published. I appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.